I would hold your hand while I say this, but I'm not going to because you're an adult and you should fucking know better. It's not normal.
I am instantly so annoyed. Instantly, that has to be the intention, surely. The condescension, there's never any reason for an adult on TikTok or to say, let me hold your hand like that. Other than condescension, other than to immediately put your audience back up because you don't really want them to agree with you. In my opinion, a lot of these people, they actively want negative feedback because it fuels the delusion that the society doesn't like them because they're fat. I've said this in my last video, I'm going to keep saying it, and as long as they keep acting like that's what's going on. That is so gross. Let me hold your hand. For me also, it also feels almost like a violation of my imagination because I have a very vivid imagination. If you tell me that you're going to touch my hand or touch me in any way, I vividly imagine it. Anyone who has like a super vivid imagination, I like full on like almost experience it. Like you like don't put that idea in my head, you creep. Don't be you put the idea in my head of you touching me without my permission and in a negative way designed to make me feel bad. You creep.
Normal to be promoting.
And that's not to her, that's just for this whole, I know it's not, she didn't come up with this. Like whoever came up with this and loads of people do it now, you're a creep. I'm sure she's just repeating, she's definitely doing it to annoy people though.
Fear of fatness. It's not normal for your greatest fear to be simply existing in a larger body.
Okay, if we're saying the biggest fear, yeah, that's a bit abnormal. Because, well, if it really is, if someone's saying that and they're not just using hyperbole, then yeah, because there are also there are many things as bad and many things worse than that. Even when you get to, I would imagine, I even when you get to like 1,000 pounds and you are completely immobile and everything hurts. I can't. Even then I think I can imagine worse, like being buried alive or something. I could go through a list of things that would be even worse than that. But I think most of the time, when I've seen people say it, and I have seen people say that, it seems to be hyperbole for most of them. And there are somewhere I'm not really sure. I would say that's. It's not. I don't even know if it's abnormal. The way you're saying it is to pathologize it. I don't think it should be pathologized like you necessarily have a disorder if you say that. I just think it's either hyperbole or and that's really common on social media. People come on at you with a big bold statement like my worst fear is whatever, right? Because especially if they're a weight loss influencer, and that's who I've seen do it. I don't think you should take it as this person has a really bad mental. It's just that it's not accurate. They are, but people say that about so many things. My worst fear is this or that. That's such a common thing to say when you don't really mean it or you haven't actually thought it through. So I really think you're being you're taking it too seriously. You're taking people too literally for the most part.
People. It's not okay, especially in a society that has an administration that directly profits and benefits from the marginalized communities shrinking their bodies and taking away their brain power.
Oh my god.
Which is, by the way, what happens when you restrict your food intake. You are less likely to make good decisions. You are less
okay, I keep wanting to pause,
but take care of those around you when you are unable to take care of yourself.
Jesus Christ. She thinks not being massively fat means you're so weak you can't think. No, look, I can't even give one link to one study because it will give the impression it's just one study. I follow this stuff. I'm super into brain health and brain longevity. That's been my biggest goal more than anything, is to have a healthy brain that gives me a good mood, gives me better concentration, helps with my ADHD, all these things. Helps with my anxiety, helps with not getting dementia, not having my memory get even worse, which is happening anyway for other reasons. So I know this. I've studied the effects on the brain of nutrition more than anything, and you don't actually start to get negative effects on the brain until you are actually starving. Fasting is actually good for the brain. Now, there are very short term, you can have some negative impact on concentration, but it's actually not as bad as the negative impact of ultra processed food. You're actually better off when you're talking the short term, like one missed meal. It's better to miss a meal if you're used to eating 3 meals a day. That has less impact on your cognitive cognition than eating an ultra processed meal for that meal. It's actually better because it's not ruining your gut microbiome. It's actually improving your gut microbiome. You might be distracted because your glucose, probably, if you live in one of the countries where it's doing these kind of studies, chances are you have terrible glucose regulation, even if it's not gone into pre-diabetes or diabetes yet, that when they measure it more accurately, they can see most of us are eating just constantly, like snacking between meals is so bad for you, with a few exceptions. I'm not saying everyone, but most people shouldn't be snacking between meals. It's just not good for your glucose stability. And for that reason, a lot of people will get hungry and it will distract them. But that's all it is. It's not that your brain, your cognition is really declining. It's a temporary thing, and it's still better than eating ultra processed trash full of chemicals that ruin your gut microbiome. So what you really need to be delineating is, what do you mean by lack of nutrition? You need to be more specific than that. Yes, if you go too long, your brain will suffer various consequences, but it depends on so many factors, and you don't actually get any kind of permanent or long-lasting damage until you are actually in starvation. And no, that doesn't mean, and you're not going to go into starvation, which means like there's a actual definition of that. It's not just your opinion of how hungry you feel subjectively. There is an actual like list of scientific objective things that have to be happening in the body before it counts as starvation. Okay, and you're not, and I'm pretty sure, I'm not an expert, I'm pretty sure that list of things doesn't happen until you're underweight. Even if you start really big, it does not that it's good to not eat anything when you're really big, but it's not technically starvation. Other bad things will happen. Like in my case, I lost weight too quickly and got gallstones, which is why I'm in a bad mood today. Which is I'm not even like that angry at her. I'm cranky today. I wore my friendly frog top today to try and cheer myself up because I've been dealing with horrible gallbladder pain today and yesterday. It's put me in a really cranky mood. And I'm just feeling a little bit better right now, so I'm trying to record this video before it comes back again. And that's because I gained weight, let myself get iron deficient, that's another factor, and then I lost it too quickly. I wasn't starving though, it's still not starving, I just lost weight so quickly that the extra fat in my fat cells got released like in a big old, too quickly, and my liver dumped a load of it in my bile salts, and that led to gallstones. That's how it works. Plus, iron deficiency speeds the whole process up. So, no, you're not actually ruining your brain by calorie restriction. And if you are overweight, it's good for your brain. I've got so many studies, a long old list of studies that I could like, but I'd have to give you so many. Like, it's easier if you just look up obesity effects on cognitive decline, obesity effects on cognition, and it includes the fat itself. Is most recently, it was just the other day, there was a study saying that certain chemicals are released by the fat itself that get into the brain and promote certain type of dementia. The one that's caused by amyloid proteins in the brain. It promotes amyloid buildup in the brain to have too much fat on your body. There is also the crap that you're usually eating in this day and age if you're overweight in an obesity epidemic location. It's usually because you're eating trash food that ruins your gut microbiome and makes you excessively hungry. That same ruined gut microbiome is what is responsible for keeping all of you healthy. So it ruins your brain as well. Even if you're eating healthy food but far too much of it, which is harder to do because you'll just feel fuller more easily, most people. But you could if you have a medical issue that makes you more hungry than other people. So if you're in that category, even then, as I said, the fat on your body makes your cognition decline. It increases dementia, increases how severe it is and how early you get dementia. You can see brain deterioration in young, like 20 to 30-year-olds who are just overweight, not even obese. It's very subtle, but there are ways of detecting subtle differences versus if you're healthy weight. Already, just when we're talking overweight and just when we're still talking quite young. So that this is like just bizarro world, everything's flipped on its head. No, calorie restriction, within reason, a certain amount of calorie restriction has been found to increase BDNF in the brain-derived neurotropic factor. It increases concentration in, once you're adapted, so the first time you'll get hungry, this happened to me, I do intermittent fasting for a couple of different reasons, and I found that, and in the first week it was tough, and I was feeling hungry. And then after that, my like insulin and everything adjusted, and my body's now in that rhythm. I don't think about food all day until it's time to think about food. My body's in that rhythm now, and my glucose is really a lot more stable than it was. It's not perfect because I have probably temple syndrome, which throws it off balance to start with, which is why I have to be so careful in my case with my health. So No, you're all backwards there. I'm sorry I went on so long about this, but this is my top issue is brain health. So please don't be telling me that calorie restriction in all cases is bad for your brain. In most cases, in this day and age, most calorie restriction people are doing is to lose weight that they need to lose. So it's actually good for their brain. And even if you are a healthy weight, fasting, not to lose weight, but so you still have the same overall number of calories, but say like you do it like I do to maintain, I have a 4 hour eating window. That is really good for your brain, actually. It's been found that it's already promoting certain processes in the body. If you are the right candidate, not everyone should do it, but if you are the right candidate to do a 4 hour feeding window type thing most days, it actually is good for you to slow down the aging process. It promotes autophagy. It's really good for the brain. It boosts BDNF, which is really good if you have ADHD, and it helps you not think about food all day. Again, for the right person. I'm not saying this isn't for everyone. But yeah, just to give you an idea of how utterly against all the science this is.
It's not normal to be looking at someone across the street and have your thought be that they are less than you.
Okay,
Because
who are you talking to? This isn't stitched on anything. I mean, it's just. I guess I see. We don't know who she's talking to, so I can't really comment on that. Maybe someone is doing that. But here's the thing: do you do that when you look at someone who's really bony? I have a feeling you do. I've got evidence.
of the size of the body they exist in. That is not any more normal than judging them for any other physical reason.
Really, any other
It's
reason?
normalized. It is not okay. Going around
What if you see
talking.
someone who is very obviously shooting up heroin? Like you should. I personally feel compassion, right? But I also feel like I wouldn't want to hire that person. I wouldn't want to have that person babysit for me. You know, like you know what I mean. Like I can have compassion, but also think that's not a reliable person. That person needs to get their stuff together. And you know, depending on how severely obese we're talking about, you can have a similar feeling, and I think it's quite justified. Like, oh, I feel sorry for that person, but they need to get their stuff together. I'm not sure I could trust their health if they gave a commitment to me that they would be there a certain day. If they look really bad, I'm going to think, I don't know if you can make it, or if you're going to have horrible acid reflux, or a problem with your knee, or you're just going to feel awful and have no energy, depending on other demands in your life. If you are really, really big, I'm talking like at least £600 plus, maybe even bigger, I'm going to start to think that you are probably not capable of many things. And it's not like a moral judgment, it's just an observation that I can't help but make as a human with eyes.
Your friends about your biggest fear being becoming a person who lives in a larger body is not healthy.
Okay, look, if I had friends who were, because I have an eye condition which flares up sometimes, which has two eye conditions, each of which have a 1 in 10 chance of eventually blinding you, but probably won't. In my case, because I've got treatment, you know, I've got access to treatment, but it's two autoimmune diseases in the eye, and they could blind me. And so when I first was diagnosed with that, I looked into that. It worried me, obviously, and I did join a Facebook group for blind people, and I did think it was actually for people who had this condition, and some of them were blind and some were not. And you know, it made me think to myself, you know, oh, I need to be a little bit like tactful in how I say this, because I don't want to go on there and be like, my worst fear is being blind. You know, it's if you're rubbing, it could seem like rubbing it in the face of someone who is already blind, but in reality, like I also didn't expect that if I just said I don't really want to become blind, I'm trying to prevent becoming blind. Do you have any advice on you know, the best type of what is this the right medicine I should be on? Are these the right drops? Do you have any advice? Any, you know, because some people obviously have gone blind from it, and nobody was saying to anyone else like that you shouldn't want to prevent blindness. Like none of the people who were blind already were angry or offended that somebody just didn't want to be blind. There is a tactful way of doing it. Like you could go in there and be really untactful, I think, if you know people there are blind and be like, oh my god, I can't bear, I would kill myself, you know. Sorry, YouTube. I hope you didn't hear that. Like I would do something bad if I thought that I was going to go blind. That's untactful, but even then, like I don't think it's kind of what a lot of people feel like when they're faced with going blind. If they weren't born blind and it's happening as an adult, like that, it was such a dramatic change in your life, and you a lot of people think that they won't be able to adapt well, and that they'll never get over the grief for their vision, you know, and they'll never be able to function normally because they weren't born blind, they didn't grow up adapted. I feel like this is similar, just in the sense that if I were to say, oh, I would absolutely hate to be £900, I think most £900 people would not be offended because they're like, well, yeah, duh, this sucks. And as far as I know, I've not actually come across a £900 person who would disagree with that. They all seem to be pretty much on the side of, yeah, if you can prevent becoming my size, which you can, obviously, like just don't eat that much, then like, as much as, or don't eat enough to get to that size for you, because it would depend on your own personal needs, like exactly how much that was. But basically, don't eat more than you need to eat, and certainly not to this degree, and then you won't get to my size. I've never seen a £900 person still this delusional as some of the people who've not got to that size yet are, where they would try and say that no one should not want to be in their position. Most people who are small, like when I got up bigger, I got to like 36 point something percent body fat percentage, which is obese, right, for a woman. And um I got there really quickly and I lost it really quickly as well. So I had a really good comparison before and after. I felt physical effects, maybe because I gained it so quickly, my body didn't have time to adjust as it would if I'd gained it more slowly. I'm not sure. And also, it was in my mid 30s, so my body was a lot less forgiving than if I'd gained it much younger. And I felt it. I felt the effects, and um, I do wonder if obviously some of these people don't know any different. They've always been this way, and it's all the symptoms have crept up slowly, so they don't know it's not just age. But no, there are effects that you should not want other people to suffer from. There is something really sick, I think, about just telling people that they should not want to avoid being immobile, uncomfortable, even just the sweat and the chub rub. Honestly, that was the worst thing that I had to deal with. It was very irritating. Like, I'm on the spectrum, so I have like sensory issues anyway, and just chub rub can be incredibly distracting when you have ADHD and you're like, what is like this sensation and the sweat and the overheating? I was very sensitive to it, and I had asthma, and my asthma my breathing got so much worse. I was panting up the stairs, a lot quicker than other people who didn't have asthma would if they got overweight. But because I already had asthma, and it's so much better now. Now that my diet is so much better than it ever had been. Actually, that's also massively helped. But just losing the weight meant it took the pressure off my diaphragm. It reduced inflammation because fat itself promotes inflammation. Even if you're eating crap food, if you're not eating enough of it to get fat, it's still better than eating loads of it. And so, and now I've got the best of both worlds. I'm eating well, and I'm not eating too much. So my asthma is so much better now. My eyes don't flare up as much as they did. All the autoimmune issues I had are so much better. And I can't imagine getting offended that someone wouldn't, if I'd stayed that size or got bigger, I can't imagine that I would ever resent someone for not wanting to also get to that size, even aesthetically, because it's fine to admit that most people just don't find it as aesthetically appealing. It doesn't mean that it's the worst thing in the world. It's just another aesthetic thing. Like, there are many aesthetic things. There are aesthetic things about my body that have nothing to do with weight, right? And my face, all sorts of things. Like, we all have, and our personalities and our talents and our other, we've all got a list of pluses and minuses. Weight's effect on your appearance is one of many things. It shouldn't be put on a pedestal as the worst, most important thing in the world, which is what fat acceptance does. It's like so much worse to them to be called fat than to be called anything else. Bald, short, tall, you're too this, you're too that. They don't care. They only and they will offend other people on their appearance. They'll call other people, they'll call out, say, Trump for being orange, which I love to do as well, but I'm not a hypocrite about it. Like, if I'm going to say someone else is orange, I'm not going to also then be offended if they point out something about my appearance if they don't like me back, Like, but these people, like, they will be very happy to insult, people's, like, their height, anything else, or they'll say, oh, you're just a bald man, like they do to Alan Roberts, for example. Okay, like, why are you, oh, you're old. Like, well, someone can't help the year they were born and the fact that they didn't like pass away early. Like, so why are you ragging on someone for being bald? But no, saying someone's fat, that is like the one thing that you can't say. Well, it's not they'll say it's in the category of criticizing someone's like skin tone or something, which is obviously so different because most people don't actually wish to change that because it's not like a negative aesthetic thing. But most people do find it negative aesthetically to be too bony and too fat. both of them. So it shouldn't be seen as insulting, even if it's just aesthetics. I wouldn't have been insulted if someone didn't want to look like me when I was at my most high body fat percentage, because to me it doesn't look as good, and I know that to most people it doesn't look as good, just for biological evolutionary reasons. We like to look in a healthy range, most of us, most of the time. There are a few outliers who don't, but most people, because of evolution, will want to look healthy. And there's absolutely no offense, because it's just like not wanting to look old, not wanting to look too short. It's just another thing that isn't that serious, whereas the health is very serious.
I would hold your hand while I say this, but I'm not going to because you're an adult and you should fucking know.
Okay, I hope that wasn't too harsh. As I said, I'm very cranky because of my gallbladder hurting today. Yeah, like and subscribe. Thanks, guys. I nearly forgot. I need to add this. So I looked in her comments. The reason I know that oh well, there are a couple of reasons. I've seen this woman before, but this comment really proves that she does judge people for their size as well. Being fat is not inherently. This is her response to somebody else who said, as a former fat person, I don't want to be fat. I am scared of being fat. Being fat is not healthy. And this lady replies, being fat is not inherently unhealthy, just as being thin is not inherently unhealthy. Okay, that seems consistent, right? But then she says, being underweight for your body is typically, quote unquote, worse for your health than being overweight. So she seems to want it both ways there, because what do you mean, quote unquote, worse? Like, is it actually bad for you to be to be underweight or not? I really would love to have an actual sit down serious discussion, not being snarky. I don't think I was snarky in this video anyway, but like I wouldn't, I really am genuinely wanting to have a constructive conversation, because this is quite interesting. So does living in a smaller body scare you, or just a larger one? Why do you think that is? And it's so fascinating to me, because don't these people realize that most people are far more, this day and age, because we see overweight people all the time, most people are far more repulsed by an excessively bony body. They are actually shocked in a way that they can't really be. Most people can't be shocked at this point. We've all seen on TV people who are like, so like, as I said, 900 pounds plus is not unheard of. You can find that. So people are not shockable at that end anymore. But people are still shockable, even through a screen. Even looking at someone on screen, people will gasp if they see like someone who's died, and you see a post-mortem of them after they died of not having enough, right? Whereas people are not that shocked anymore. They might have some reaction, but it's not going to be shock and horror, and it's not fear to the same degree as if, for example, they will show, and I've seen this on Super Size versus Super Skinny, and I seem to remember they did things like this at school as well, where they will show you, if they're worried about you developing a restrictive condition, they will like show you images of an underweight person to shock you. Someone who's got like worse than you are, or worse than you're saying you want to be, like they've got really bony. They will use that to shock you out of it. The visual, they are trying, essentially, they're saying, look how ugly this is. Do you want to look like that? They're also saying, look how unhealthy, but mostly they're just using, when they're just using visuals, that is them appealing to your sense of, isn't it ugly to be that bony? And I've never seen any of these fat acceptance people acknowledge that or say that's wrong, that you are basically scaring people off of looking a certain way by just showing them their body and saying, oh, look at that. Like, isn't that offensive? Why don't they ever acknowledge that? Yeah, and this, so is it worse? What does this even mean? Typically, quote unquote, worse. So do you think it's worse to be underweight than overweight or not? You can't seem to make up your mind. And it does, I feel like that's a sign of, again, I think this is all very much a symptom of a mental problem, of a coping mechanism. Like one of the followed by the letter D conditions. It's just like the restrictive one. These people are, in my opinion, it's all part of a distraction technique, and this whole belief system that fat people alone are so persecuted. People just don't want to look fat, but they don't care about looking too bony. It's like completely ignoring reality. It's ignoring so much data. There's so much data out there showing that people react more harshly against excessively bony bodies than against excessively fat ones. It's bone phobia you need to be worried about, not fat phobia. Bone phobia, as you could call it. Why not? If you want to call it fat phobia, why not say the other is bone phobia? Is like causes people to get massive petitions to try and get them kicked off the internet. it's saying like why does it only bother you to live in a big body but not a small one? That's just not true. So many people wrote petitions to get Eugenia Cooney kicked off the internet, and they always do it. They're always mass flagging her just for looking the way she does. It's not because she's telling people to look like her. Unlike some other people in this movement, she has never actually done that. The worst thing that she does is she will deny that what she looks like is unhealthy, and she will claim it's just her natural like body or whatever. She won't admit this because she doesn't eat enough, right? That's toxic, but she only does that when she's actually challenged on it, like in a super chat. As far as I've seen, as far as I've ever heard, she doesn't just make videos to tell everyone, oh, by the way, this is really healthy and beautiful, and if you look like this, you should be fine with it. And your doctor is bone phobic. If she doesn't do any of that stuff, she will just, if someone is challenging her on it in a like direct way and she can't really ignore it, she will give that lie, right? That's the worst thing that she does. It's not actually as severe as what some of the fat activists are doing, and yet she's the one who is always being mass flagged. And I'm not saying that I approve of when she says that stuff either. She's also obviously saying something that she should be ideally she should be admitting, yeah, I have a problem, I don't eat enough. And I think a lot of people would be off her back. But with overweight people, you seem to be able to lie and say that you're all fine and nothing's wrong and you're not eating too much, and you deny visible health problems that people can see. I won't name any names, but I've seen that a couple of times now. Deny that they have any connection to your obesity or to your overeating, or both, because sometimes it's both things that can be contributing to an illness, the overeating itself and the fatness on the body. So no, I don't think that this is very balanced, because if yeah, look at Eugenia also got forced into mental hospital and presumably could have been, I don't know if she was, but she certainly could have been force fed legally. And in many countries that are not her own country, it would be much easier to do. In the United States, actually doesn't do it anywhere near as much as most countries do, like to put people in mental hospital in general against their will. So if you live in most countries in the world, it's really easy to be forced into care if you deny that you are underweight when you're very underweight, and they will force feed you. They'll put a tube in you that leaves a scar forever. They risk refeeding syndrome. Fat activists never have any complaints about any of this, even though so many of them claim to have had a restrictive problem. You'd think they would have had experience and be outraged, but weirdly, despite all the huge numbers of them saying that they have had this condition, none of them seem to know of any of the controversies around how that condition should be treated. A lot of people are, it's a controversial issue. Should they be forced into care at all? As an adult, certainly, and should they be, forcefully, tube fed? Should they be, at what point? How easy should it be to get someone forced into care for that? That's not an issue at the other end. There's literally been one person who has ever forced, that I'm aware of, that's ever been forced into mental hospital for being obese, and that was a man with Prader-Willi syndrome, and it was in the UK, and it was very controversial at the time, and there was an uproar, like, how can you put someone in psychiatric hospital just for saying what he was saying was, my body is beautiful, I don't want to change. He had Prader-Willi syndrome, which generally comes with a lowered IQ, which is a complicating factor. But again, it's still like, raises this question: should it be? Was his IQ low enough that he was, really interesting moral dilemmas here all around, right? And when he was released, quite quickly, he wasn't forced to get to a normal weight like people with the other condition often are. They're forced to get to a normal weight before they're released. He wasn't. They released him still very obese, and he died very shortly afterwards, younger than Eugenia is. And yet here you are acting like you're not afraid at all of the side that is killing people in their 20s, in their teens, just like the other one does. The other one can kill you that young, and so can this. And both of them, you can get complacent when you think that, well, that person's been that really, really like that for so many years and they're still here. And that happens on both ends, where some people genetically and probably for other environmental reasons can get really big before they pass away, but other people pass away of obesity complications actually a lot smaller, like only like 400 pounds, and they have an obesity complication that ends their life. So it's like genetic, and it's the same with the other end. Eugenia is still around in seemingly her early 30s. I'm not entirely sure, because I did look into, do we actually know for sure her age, and we don't. But people think she's like 30, which means she outlived Brittany Sauer, who died of an obesity complication, and never had anyone put her into mental hospital. So this idea that society is biased in favor of smallness and against bigness, if you want to, sorry for those childish words, but you know what I mean, like it's just not true. It's just not true at all. But it's part of the mental matrix of B followed by E followed by D, the overeating one. Like it's part of that delusion that you need to keep yourself in it. in my opinion. And according to other YouTubers who've had it, who I've not had it, but others, I'm going by people who've had it describing it. I'm not pulling it out of my bum, in case you wondered. So yeah, now I've finally finished. Bye. How do I end this?